All right, this is our last section about mitosis, and we're going to talk about what happens when mitosis goes wrong. The most common result when DNA is incorrectly synthesized is actually nothing. A lot of times the DNA, any mistake in DNA getting copied happens in a part of the DNA that doesn't affect anything, and absolutely nothing happens. And we know this because our chromosomes are full of DNA copying mistakes, and they don't do anything. And we'll talk about that later when we get more into detail about DNA. We'll talk about how you can have mutations that don't cause anything. But if the mistake happens in what we call the cell cycle control center, then it can result in unregulated mitosis. So the cell cycle control center is literally a part of the DNA that controls mitosis itself, when and how mitosis happens. If the cells don't, if the cell cycle control system gets messed up, then mitosis is going to start happening over and over and over and over again without proper proofreading even. And that's what cancer is. So cancer is where cells divide excessively, the control system, remember that's part of the genes in the chromosomes, where if that doesn't regulate or stop mitosis or make sure that the other parts of the cell cycle happens, then the cell just does mitosis again, does mitosis again. This can lead to a tumor, which is an excessive growth of cells. If in the normal course of events, your immune system is actually constantly searching for abnormal cells where the cell cycle control system is not working correctly. And so normally, you actually develop cancer many, many times during your life. You just never knew about it because your immune system destroyed those abnormal cells before they could cause damage. The problem comes when the immune system doesn't catch those cells, doesn't destroy them in time, and then they can start growing out of control. So that can cause a tumor. Most tumors are what we call benign, meaning that the cells grow, they stay at that original site. You get a physical lump of cells, but they don't damage anything else. They can cause problems sometimes because they grow and actually push on other structures. And if that happens, you can just remove the benign tumor. Everything is fine. These don't necessarily spread to other parts of the body. And so a lot of times we don't even call these cancer, even though technically it is an overgrowth of cells. We just say it's a benign tumor. The problem comes either because the cancer is pushing on something and causing damage to tissues, or especially when the cancer begins to spread. So we call that a malignant tumor. A malignant tumor is one that has undergone metastasis. Metastasis is where cells from the tumor start breaking off and traveling either through the bloodstream or the lymphatic system to other tissues. They can then lodge in those other tissues and form new tumors. That can become a problem in and of itself. They can displace normal tissue, interrupt organ function, and this is hugely problematic. Now, one thing that's interesting about cancer is that cancer is named for the type of cells that became cancerous. So if you have breast cancer, and yes, men can get breast cancer, by the way. If you get breast cancer, if the breast cancer then metastasizes and those breast cancer cells spread to the liver, for example, you don't have liver cancer. You have breast cancer in your liver. The breast cancer could spread to any organ in the body. That's a thing that can happen. Former President Jimmy Carter, about 5 or so years ago, had a melanoma, a skin cancer, that spread to his brain. They were able to successfully treat it, which was amazing. I thought he was a goner. he's still alive and doing great. So he's amazing. Anyway, not all cancers cause tumors necessarily. It's always an overgrowth of cells, but leukemia is a cancer of the cells that form your blood. And if they create those cells too fast, then those cells get released into the bloodstream before they're mature. They're not fully functioning, and immune cells in particular are released into the blood before they can fight infections, and your blood can't do its job. Your immune system can't do its job. Treatments for cancer, the easiest is to just remove the tumor. Surgical removal of tumor is the first and easiest treatment for cancer, and a lot of times that's all you need. Radiation uses high energy radiation, such as X-rays, that can kill cancer cells. It's especially useful in parts of the body where it's difficult to do surgery, such as in the brain. It does sometimes kill living tissue around the cancer, but often it can stop the cancer cells from growing, and it can be effective if the cancer hasn't metastasized. Chemotherapy is a form of treatment that actually stops mitosis. It has really bad side effects because it stops mitosis. And so cells in your body that do mitosis very, very quickly, such as the cells lining the stomach, which are constantly being replaced, the lining of the stomach doesn't get replaced, and that leads to nausea and vomiting and inability to digest foods. It's a terrible side effect. And that's because chemotherapy disrupts the process of mitosis. It can be very, very effective against cancers that have spread and against tumors that are metastasizing. However, because the effects of the chemotherapy are so harsh themselves, it's a harsh treatment. But if it's that or dying, well, then the chemotherapy is usually a better choice. Okay, so that's cancer. That is a result of mitosis not being controlled. Now, other things that can happen, I just want to talk for a moment, I'll leave the screen black for a moment. Other things that can happen if mitosis doesn't happen correctly, or if proofreading doesn't happen correctly, in the cells that we call germ cells, the cells that make eggs and sperm, then mistakes in DNA can be passed to the next generation. And those mutations can cause problems in the next generation or cause no problems in the next generation. And we'll talk more about that when we get to genetics in the next unit.